This is the early edition, a curated weekday guide to major news and developments over the past 24 hours. Curated by Lizzie Jennings and read by an automated voice. Published March 31st, 2026 on Just Security, an essential resource for those shaping a just and secure world. Here's today's news. Iran war. President Trump yesterday renewed his threat to begin completely obliterating Iranian power plants, oil production facilities, and possibly all desalination plants if Iran's leaders did not agree to reopen the Strait of Hormuz immediately. A spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry yesterday maintained that Iran had held no negotiations with the United States and would not do so while the military campaign continues. Cheyenne M. Daniels reports for Politico. Efrat Livni reports for the New York Times. Trump told his aides he is willing to end the U.S. military campaign against Iran, even if the Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed, administration officials told the Wall Street Journal. In recent days, Trump and his aides assessed that prioritizing reopening the strait would push the conflict beyond his timeline of 4 to 6 weeks. Instead, he has decided the U.S. should focus on targeting Iran's Navy and missile capabilities, then begin winding down military operations while using diplomatic pressure to push Tehran to restore normal trade flows, the sources said. If that fails, Washington would press allies in Europe and the Gulf to take the lead on reopening the strait, the officials added. Gasoline in the United States crossed an average of $4 a gallon today. Iran's parliament yesterday approved an initial plan to institute a toll in the Strait of Hormuz, according to Iranian news agency Fars. Emmett Lindner reports for the New York Times. An Iranian attack struck a Kuwaiti tanker near Dubai early this morning, according to the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. There was no oil leakage from the loaded tanker, the authorities in the United Arab Emirates said. Francesco Regalado reports for the New York Times. Israel and the United States launched a new wave of strikes on Iran today, hitting Tehran in the early morning hours. Trump shared a video which appeared to show a massive attack on Isfahan. Fire tracking satellites from NASA suggest the explosion happened near Mount Safed, an area believed to have military positions. John Gambrell reports for AP News. Iran war. Political response. Italy has denied permission for U.S. military aircraft to land at the Sigonella Air Base in Sicily before flying to the Middle East, a source said today. The source did not specify how many aircraft were involved or when Rome declined to give permission. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday said that historic security agreements have been reached with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar during his tour of the Middle East. Zelensky's trip was focused on sharing Ukraine's expertise in countering Iranian-designed drones in return for corresponding security cooperation, he said during his nightly video address. Reuters reports. I only see benefits for Russia from the war with Iran continuing, Zelensky told Axios yesterday. Zelensky said that Russia's economy is getting a boost from surging oil prices and the loosening of U.S. sanctions, while the conflict leads to shortages of air defense interceptors and other weapons that Ukraine desperately needs. Lebanon. 2 UN peacekeepers traveling in a convoy were killed when it was struck by an explosion of undetermined origin in southern Lebanon yesterday, according to a UN report. The UN Security Council will convene an emergency session today, following the killing of 3 peacekeepers in the last 2 days. The Israeli military said yesterday that it was aware of the reports and that it was thoroughly reviewing the circumstances, adding it should not be assumed the peacekeepers were harmed by the Israeli military. Ewan Ward reports for the New York Times. Efrat Livni reports for the New York Times. AP News reports. Israel-Gaza war. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 4 people in Gaza yesterday, local health officials said. Medics said 3 people were killed and 2 others wounded when an Israeli plane fired a missile at a group of Palestinians near the Zaytown neighborhood. The Israeli military said it had struck and killed members of a Hamas armed cell. Another airstrike killed one person and wounded 6 others outside a community kitchen in the Nusayrat camp in central Gaza. Nidal al-Maghrabi and Ali Sawafta report for Reuters. West Bank violence. Israel's parliament yesterday passed a law that makes death by hanging the default sentence in Israeli military courts for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks. Israeli citizens could also face the death penalty for killings intended to negate the existence of the State of Israel. The intent is clearly for the law to apply to Palestinians and not to Jewish terrorism at all, Yoav Sapir, a former head of Israel's Public Defender's Office, said, adding that the statute's discriminatory provisions will most likely lead the Supreme Court to strike it down. Aaron Boxerman and Jonathan Rees report for the New York Times. Sudanese civil war. Rape and sexual violence remain part of everyday life in areas of Sudan, even when fighting in the civil war has moved elsewhere, according to a Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières report published today. The report is based on testimonies from 3,396 victims who sought treatment in MSF-supported facilities across North and South Darfur from January 2024 to November 2025. Barbara Plett-Usher reports for BBC News. Other global developments. An attack near Petite Riviere in Haiti on Sunday killed at least 70 people and injured 30, according to a human rights group. Police initially reported 16 dead and 10 injured. The Defensors Plus group said it estimated 6,000 people had been displaced by the violence. The UN estimated that more than 2,000 people left their homes in recent days following raids by armed gangs nearby. Stephen Aristil and Natalia Sinyakowski report for Reuters. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said yesterday that he and Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara hope that 80% of the Syrians in Germany will return home in the next 3 years. Merz provided little detail on how the returns would come about. Bethany Bell reports for BBC News. U.S., Caribbean, and Pacific operations. The State Department yesterday announced the reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Venezuela. Phineas Y. reports for Politico. Responding to questions yesterday about why the U.S. Coast Guard allowed a Russian tanker full of crude to reach Cuba, despite blocking other countries from doing the same, the White House said that the United States would evaluate oil shipments to Cuba on a case-by-case basis for humanitarian reasons or otherwise. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt added that there has been no firm change in our sanctions policy, and declined to answer whether the administration was comfortable with Mexico now sending oil to Cuba. Zolan Kano-Youngs, Anton Troyanovsky, and Maria Abi Habib report for the New York Times. U.S. immigration developments. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced yesterday that it will resume processing some asylum applications after it halted all claims following the shooting of 2 National Guard members in November. USCIS has lifted the adjudicative hold for thoroughly screened asylum seekers from non-high-risk countries, an agency spokesperson said. USCIS did not say which countries were considered non-high-risk. Jasper Ward reports for Reuters. The Mexican government yesterday vowed to take legal steps against the Trump administration over conditions in U.S. detention facilities. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said that Mexico would file a brief in support of a federal lawsuit over detention conditions and raise the issue with the Organization of American States. The rebukes from Mexico came after ICE announced that another Mexican man had died in a detention facility in California last Wednesday. Tim Arango, Jasmine Ulloa, and Allison McCann report for the New York Times. U.S. domestic developments. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's broker at Morgan Stanley contacted BlackRock in February about making a multi-billion-dollar investment in the asset manager's Defense Industrial Active ETF, shortly before the United States launched military action against Iran, sources said. The investment did not go ahead, as the fund was not yet available for Morgan Stanley clients to buy. 3 sources said the inquiry was flagged internally at BlackRock. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said yesterday, "This allegation is entirely false and fabricated." Neither Hegseth nor any of his representatives approached BlackRock about any such investment. Paul Murphy, Harriet Agnew, Joshua Franklin, and James Politi report for the Financial Times. Representative Eric Swalwell's DCA lawyers sent a cease and desist letter to the FBI yesterday, seeking to block the release of files from a decade-old investigation into Swalwell's ties to a suspected Chinese spy. Chris Cameron reports for the New York Times. Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat of California, yesterday issued an executive order that requires safety and privacy guardrails for AI companies contracting with the state. "We're not going to sit back and let that happen," Newsom said in a statement, referring to Trump's effort to supersede state action on AI. Cecilia Kang reports for the New York Times. Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican of Florida, yesterday signed legislation renaming Palm Beach International Airport after Trump. Andrew Atterbury reports for Politico. The Justice Department's Inspector General has apparently ignored 20 instances of possible wrongdoing by the Trump administration, according to lawyers for the DOJ whistleblower Erez Rueveni. The epidemic of alleged misconduct has been met with a shrug by the agency whose job it is to address such allegations, the lawyer said in a letter yesterday sent to the leaders of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. Devlin Barrett. Trump administration actions. Over 24 U.S. onshore wind projects are stalled due to Pentagon delays in carrying out the necessary reviews. The American Clean Power Association is waiting to hear back on a letter it sent earlier this month to Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installations, and Environment, Dale Marks, asking him to explain what is causing the delays. Amy Harder reports for Axios. Trump administration litigation. The Trump administration filed a lawsuit yesterday against the Minnesota Education Department and the group in charge of interscholastic athletics, accusing both of violating civil rights protections for girls by allowing transgender students to participate on girls' sports teams. Michael C. Bender reports for the New York Times. In case you missed it, yesterday on Just Security. In the U.S. strike on an Iranian school, what a serious military investigation should look like. By Annie Scheel and Priyanka Modaparthi. The case for imposing costs on China's AI distillation campaigns. By Joe Kawam. Transitional Justice in Syria. Domestic-led accountability efforts cannot function in isolation. By Rebecca Hamilton and Anya Neistat. Thank you for listening to Just Security's early edition today, March 31st, 2026. If you enjoy listening, Just Security's analytic articles are also available in audio form on the justsecurity.org website. To stay up to date on Just Security's analysis of law, policy, and current events, go to justsecurity.org, subscribe to Just Security on Substack, and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads.